Hey everyone, welcome to our first interview for Solve Society. Today we're super excited to have an interview with a focus of talking about Spanish taxes for investing, what you need to know, and how you can optimize here in Spain. Also, we'll be talking about the famous Beckham Law, which is one of the best ways to save on taxes here in Spain. And as a bonus, we also got into the nuances of the 183-day rule when it comes to Spanish tax residency. What do you need to do in order to protect yourself from the Spanish tax authorities? All right, now, enough of me talking, and let's get straight into the interview. I'm actually, to be honest, not too sure how to start this session in terms of, I don't know, introductions. Do you have like an introduction for yourself prepared? Or
You mean about me, about my story, or about the issue, the topic?
maybe just, yeah, maybe an introduction briefly, a little bit about you. About if you were to pitch to like a client, who are you in 1.5 minutes? Basically, that kind of thing. Just maybe a little bit
Yeah,
flavor of your background so that the audience can also understand who you are and that you're just not just a random. so,
exactly. Yeah, no,
so,
definitely, definitely.
okay.
So my story is basically I was born in Barcelona, Spain. I went to an international school. My mom, she's from Switzerland. My father, he's from Barcelona. I studied economics, then a master's degree in taxation. I have over 5, 6 years experience in the tax field, and I'm basically specialized on people that come from abroad, on foreigners who have interests in Spain, yeah, who wants to buy a property here in Spain or who wants to basically come and live here in Spain. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
especially since COVID, people have seen that they can live in Spain and work for companies abroad. Yeah, they can just do home office or they can just fly to that country and then come back or whatever. So it's pretty clear that everyone wants to live in the Mediterranean coast with the sun, good weather, beaches, everything instead of living in Northern Europe. Yeah. So in this last year, we have experienced an increase on the demand of people who want to really come and live here in Spain. And of course, the tax field is one of the main issues that needs to be taken into consideration when moving to Spain, because the consequences of being here in Spain, a tax resident, they are really an issue, I would say.
Yeah, especially with the tax authorities here like being so notoriously aggressive versus other countries, like even like they have the right to embargo and seize the funds in your account. It's something that you don't really find in a lot of other European countries. So you can imagine, you can probably see in the clients that you deal with every day that's often like scared, how do I declare the taxation properly, and also is there a way to get around the sometimes very high taxes here in Spain versus other countries?
Exactly, definitely, definitely. That's an issue here. The Spanish tax agency goes very hard, and here in Spain, once the tax authority states that you need to pay X amount of euros, then you need to first pay it, and then you can try to claim this money back. But at first, you need to pay it, and if you do not pay that, then they have the right, of course, to get your goods that you have. That's true. Yeah, definitely.
I'm curious, what's actually the some of the most like extreme cases or like extreme scares you've seen of clients where they suddenly, I don't know, they did something slightly wrong or whatever, and they see maybe a huge fine in the mail or face jail time. Like, how does it work? Like, what's one of the worst scare cases that you've seen?
Yeah, I would say one of the the scariest cases is the Modelo 720, which is a tax formula, which was actually just an informative formula that was introduced here in Spain around the year 2012. But even though it was just an informative tax formula, if you did not file this formula, then the Spanish tax authorities would have considered that the goods that you did not declare, they would have considered these goods as a capital gain. And on top of that, they would also have put a sanction on that. So there was a case, pretty famous case, which was one of the first ones, of a Swiss guy that worked in Switzerland for many years. Then he came to Spain. He wasn't aware of this obligation, and then he had to sell the property that he had in Switzerland because of not declaring that in order to pay the taxes to the Spanish tax authorities. So he actually lost the property that he had, even though that this was a property that he earned by himself. So that was like a pretty extreme case. That was also a very famous case here in Spain. And from that point, everybody was super scared of this Model 720. But in the end, the European Supreme Court established that these sanctions that were totally unfair, and they
Mm.
abolished the sanction system that was here in Spain, that was abolished 2 years ago, more or less. So right now, the Modelo 720 is just an informative Modelo where if you do not file it, then you receive like a penalty of 200 euros or something like that. But in the past, it was like a real nightmare for all of the people who had some goods or rights abroad.
I'm curious, like, from like Modelo 720, like, why is it such a big thing for the Spanish government to know your general wealth and assets? Like, why do they keep track of it so strongly? And is the worry just the 200 euro penalty, or is there anything else?
It's
Like, is there a bigger problem?
it's more about having the people under control. Yeah. And here in Spain, all the companies needs to facilitate information to the tax authorities. So all the money that comes from Spanish companies, the tax authorities knows everything about that. So you cannot hide.
Mm.
But what about all the goods and incomes that you receive from abroad, from Brazil, let's say, for example, or from China or from the US? So the Spanish tax authority does not have a direct access to all of this information. So, and due to the fact that the world income rule applies and the wealth tax rule also applies, the Spanish tax authority wants to really know what you have abroad in order to tax everything that you have abroad. And the only way to get to know to this information is by establishing an additional obligation, which is the Modelo 720, where you are
Mm.
obliged to communicate everything that you have abroad. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that also then brings us to today's topic when it comes to the public market investing, because a lot of people, real estate is one common sort of path that people invest their assets, but nowadays, especially over the last two decades at least, like as the world has become more financially literate in terms of investing in stocks and everything, we've got a lot of people investing in public markets, and a lot of questions that we see both in our community and also probably you see from clients on a weekly or daily basis is like, okay, so how does taxation for public market investing work in Spain? Like, how do I deal with my public market assets if I've got a portfolio, here in Spain, abroad? So we're going to talk about that today. So let's maybe, I mean, you've seen the questions beforehand, so we'll start to just go through them. Go through them. So, like, first question here, if I just invest in stocks in a brokerage account, at what point do I have to start declaring it, and when do I start paying taxes on it, and at what rates? So, is there an investable allowance that is tax free? Like in some countries in the UK, you have a certain taxable allowance, or the moment you invest 100 euros in Apple and it grows to 120 euros by the end of the year, do I have to now declare that? Like, what do I have to do?
Yeah, here in Spain, you need to declare everything. Yeah, that's the main rule with the Spanish tax authorities. There are some double tax agreements with some countries, such as Brazil, for example, where the dividends are not taxed. All the dividends coming from, for example, from a Brazilian company, they are not taxed here in Spain. But besides these very isolated cases like Brazil, in all the other cases, you need to declare everything here in Spain. Here in Spain, every single person has a free amount that doesn't not need to be taxed, which is 5,550 euros. Let's say 6,000 euros a year. Then, of course, it can be increased if you have a disability, or if you are an old person, or if you have children, for example. It gets increased a little bit, but it's not that much. And
So,
regarding, yeah.
yeah, just regarding the 6,000, sorry, the 6,000, is that the amount of capital gains I'm allowed to have without it being taxed,
Is
or that's the amount I'm allowed to invest?
6,000 is the amount that everybody has as a free tax. So
Okay.
if you are below this amount, then the authorities consider that you need at least 6,000 euros more or less just to be in a room and just to eat rice, let's say every day, or
Yeah.
but just to live a little bit. But regarding the investments, if you invest in Apple or if you invest in any shares in the stock markets, you need to declare this amount. Here in Spain, there is more or less a threshold of 1,500 euros a year. which you do not need to declare that if you do not have any other incomes. Let's suppose that you are just living with your parents and you earn 1,500 euros. So you could just avoid paying taxes in this case. But in any other case, you really need to declare it. But the good thing is that you only need to declare it when you sell the share. Until as long as you do not sell the share, even though the value of the share goes up two or three times, until you do not sell it, you do not need to declare it as a capital gain.
Oh, so I can keep investing, let's say, maybe even grow my portfolio to maybe 10,000 euros of maybe, let's say, Apple stocks, and I don't have to declare it till I actually sell it?
Till you sell it. So you can just buy it for 100 euros, and if the value can be by 2 million euros, and you do not need to pay any capital gain on this share until you sell it. You would need to declare it in the Modelo 720, for example, because in the Modelo 720, everything that goes up from 50,000 euros needs to be declared. So if the total amount of the shares that you hold are over the threshold of 50,000 euros, then you need to declare it. But this is just informative. You don't need to pay taxes on this increase of value until you sell it.
Okay. This is 50 as in 50, right? Not
Exactly,
15.
50 as 50. Exactly, 50.
Okay, 50. I'm curious, does it make a difference? Because you said, I can let it grow as long as I don't sell it, I'm fine. But what about like public market stocks that pay dividends? So dividend paying stocks, let's say, I don't know, I have a stock portfolio of 50,000, but they're all dividend paying stocks. So I do receive an income, let's say, from it. I'm not selling those stocks, but I'm getting dividends.
Yeah.
Is this dividend income taxable or?
Yeah, in any case, it's taxable. Besides the case of Brazil, for example, it's taxable. Usually, the double tax agreement between Spain and all the other countries, they agree that the country where the money is coming from, let's say, for example, someone who is living in Spain and has shares in an American company, and the American company just pays dividends. That would be like a typical case, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in the US, the US government would have the right to tax these dividends, but always with a maximum tax rate, which goes usually between 10 and 15%. Yeah, between 10 and
Mm-hmm.
15%. Here in Spain, the capital gain tax, or the tax rates that applies for dividends, capital gains, and interest that someone receives, they are taxed between 19 and 28%, which means that if you land, for example, on an average tax rate of, let's say, 23%, yeah, between 19 and 28, let's say 23, for example, if you have paid 15% in the US, then you would need here in Spain to pay the difference, which is 8 percentual points.
Okay, so like how does it work in terms of like where I get taxed? Because let's say like my is it based on where the share like the share of the company? So like if it's an American company, or is it based on where my brokerage account is? So if, for example, if I have an account with, let's say, eToro, and it's a brokerage account that's registered in Spain, and I buy an American or a Brazilian company share, how do I deal with the taxes there then? Like, does the brokerage account do it automatically for me, or do I only declare it in Spain because the brokerage account is in Spain? Like, how do I deal with those things? And if I have, I don't know, if I buy an index fund, let's say that's based somewhere in the US or somewhere in Europe, like, can I just print out something from the brokerage account, or do I have like to just deal with all the taxes in Spain, or do I have to now find a US accountant to file taxes for something in the US and then again in Spain?
Usually, when you receive the summary of the year where there are all the dividends paying stated, there's usually the withholding tax is already included. So you just receive the summary and it says you receive 1,000 euros, and then minus withholding tax of maybe 15% or 10%. And usually they are obliged to retain this amount of money. And then you just pay the rest. You just pay the difference in this case. In any case, if there wouldn't be any withholding tax made, then the Spanish tax agency would require from you to pay the whole amount until 23%. So in the end taxation is always 23%. The only thing that changes is whether you pay a little bit more in the source country where the money is coming from or not. But in the end, the whole thing, the big picture is the taxation in your home country, which in this case would be.
Okay. Wait, just Scott's typing in the chat. He's in the backstage right now, sort of like listening in. He's mentioning that okay, well, we also need to keep into account that maybe some of our like our questions and our answers maybe need to be a little bit more concise. So
Okay.
I think I need to make my questions a little bit smaller so that it's a little bit more soundbitey for social media. So I'll keep it a bit shorter for my next questions. So okay, what is the process for declaring taxes on my public stock investment portfolio in Spain? What do I actually have to do?
Exactly. You just invest there, whatever amount of money you want to, and then there is the annual income tax declaration where you just put there the money that you have received from your investments. Only in the case that you have sold the shares or whatever you have invested in an investment fund or whatever, and the dividends that you have earned. Actually, the annual income tax declaration is pretty easy, let's say so, because you just need to say what you have earned. Then the Spanish tax authority, they have 4 years to prove whatever you have said. And of course, if there's a tax inspection, they are going to ask you and tell you, hey, you said that
Yeah.
you earn 2,000 euros. Give us some evidence about that. Yeah, but actually, you can give
Okay.
the number that you would like to. Yeah, there are some people who like to take some risks and they just put some numbers and then they hope
Mm.
that after 4 years the Spanish tax agency doesn't say anything and that would be it.
What's the likelihood of Spanish tax authorities like catching you if you lie on your if you lie on your investments?
It depends a lot of on the amount of money that you are investing. That's the key issue. Yeah, I have right now a tax inspection from a client of mine who traded 17 million euros. So he became a tax inspection for the last 4 years. So it depends really on the amount. The tax agency just really want to catch the big fishes. Yeah, I mean, if you are trading 1,000 euros, don't worry, just take the risk. Nothing is going to happen. It is very unlikely, you know. The Spanish tax authorities, before starting a tax procedure, they just do like a little bit overview of your situation and they see, okay, let's see how much money we can get out of that. We need to take into consideration that a Spanish tax inspector earns like 8 or 9,000 euros a gross salary a month, plus the people who work with him. So, of course, if they are going to start an investigation, they expect
Yeah.
to get at least 30 or 40,000 euros from you. If not, they are not going to start it.
So what do you think is like the smallest case that you've ever seen of someone getting inspected? Like what's the smallest amount?
The smallest amount would be like around 23,000 euros. That would be like the smallest amount per my experience that I have seen from a tax inspection.
Okay, so 23,000 euro
For
account
my
like
experience,
already got inspected. Okay,
absolutely.
got it. All right, next question. So if I'm living in Spain, where do I have to base my brokerage account? Does my brokerage account need to be in Spain or can it be elsewhere?
It can be elsewhere, wherever you want to. The only thing that counts is that you declare it. That's the only thing that really matters. It can be in China, in Brazil, in the US, in Europe, in Spain. Doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so if I move to Spain from abroad and I just leave my brokerage account there in my home country, can I still contribute to it, or do I have to set up a new thing in Spain? So can I still send money abroad?
Yeah, you can just let it abroad and do whatever you want abroad. There's nothing that will change.
Okay, and when it comes to the taxes, like if I for my brokerage account abroad, do I need to then like go about the do I need to declare the taxes in that home country first for that brokerage account, and then the remainder amount here in Spain, or
Exactly. Usually you are here in Spain. You are going to be taxed for your worldwide income, and then in that country where the money is coming from, you will need to file a tax declaration there. There are some rules where if the withholding tax was made properly, then you are exempted to file the tax declaration because it is exactly the same as it was withholded. Yeah. So if they withhold a
yeah?
15%, then if you just file the tax declaration, everything was already paid. Yeah, so there's nothing else to do. So in some countries there are some rules where if the withholding was done properly, then you are not obliged to pay anything else.
So if I had a brokerage account in the U.S. and they withheld the money correctly, do I have to pay any taxes for it in Spain since I'm living in Spain, or
Yeah, I would need to have the certificate of the U.S. authorities where it says that you paid 15% through the withholding tax. Yeah, and then here in Spain, if you are in around 23 or 24%, then in Spain you would need to pay this difference until 23 or 24, which is the final taxation in your case.
Okay, got it. Got it. All right. So, next topic. So, some countries like the US and the UK have tax advantage accounts like 401ks, IRAs, ISAs, where people are able to invest and contribute to get tax free capital gains. So, if they move to Spain, can they keep contributing to this back home?
Yeah, they can still contribute in anything they want to. But the bad thing here is that in Spain there are no tax exemptions like that. There's, for example, a tax exemption if you want to contribute to a pension plan, but the tax exemption goes just until 1,500 euros, which is almost nothing. Yeah. So in the past it was until 8,000 euros. Then they reduced it until 1,500 euros. So actually, here in Spain, it wouldn't make much sense here in Spain to invest in some plants like that.
So wait, so like in the scenario where like I'm still able to contribute to those tax advantage accounts back home, I have to pay taxes of those accounts in Spain, even though those holdings are tax free in those home countries.
Yeah, that's basically one of the things that we really need to take in to pay attention to, because I'm going to tell you that just a personal experience with many of my German clients. In Germany, if you have a house and you sell this house after 10 years, it is tax free. All right. So if a German guy that has a house that bought 20 years ago for 200,000 euros, and now this house is 1 million euros or half of a million euros, if this person moves to Spain and then after moving to Spain sells this house, then in Germany it will be tax exempt. But here in Spain, the Spanish tax agency would ask to this person to pay the capital gain tax. Yeah, so that's something that really needs to pay, that people really need to pay attention to before moving to Spain. If you want to sell something that in your country is tax exempt, please sell it before coming to Spain. Yeah, if you come to Spain, then do not sell anything. And if you come to that case where you really want to sell it, then go back for that year. Let's say you want to sell it in 2028. Then for 2028, go back to your country, sell that whatever you want to sell, and then come back in 2029.
Okay, got it. Is there any way to get any exemptions for selling those things in a foreign country?
I mean, you
If,
mean
if if there's any if there's any exemptions to selling holdings abroad and then taking that money to Spain, if there any way to exempt it from taxes?
Actually, there's no exemption. The only exemption if, for example, a holding sells a company where the holding owns more than 5%. Yeah, then the sale of the shares of the daughter company will be almost tax exempt in the mother company. This is the only real exemption, which is really good when it comes to structuring big wealths or for family offices or something like that. Everything is structured with a holding on top, and then it is full of companies down there.
Yeah. Okay, got it. And also, when it comes to like that kind of like taxation, like how does it work with double taxation between these countries, between Spain and sort of the rest? Does it matter if it's in within the EU or if it's from a non-EU country like the US and UK, or does it not really make a difference,
It
except maybe Brazil?
So in the Spanish income tax law, it is stated that everything that you pay abroad for taxes will be deduced here in Spain. So even though if there would be a country where there's no double tax agreement, if you can just demonstrate that you have paid a certain amount of tax, then you can deduce this tax here in Spain. All right. So
Okay.
actually, it doesn't matter where the money is coming from. The only thing that makes a difference is in certain things, like for example dividends. With some countries, there's maybe in the country where the money is coming from, maybe according to the double tax agreement, this country has only the right to tax 10%, and maybe in other country 15%. So the differences
Yeah.
tend to be very very slightly differences.
Okay, got it. Now, so what special tax regimes are there to be taken advantage of when it comes to investing taxation? So, for example, the Beckham Law.
Yeah, definitely,
Could
definitely. The Beckham Law is one of the main dishes. It's one of the main law figures that everyone wants to apply. It is the best thing that I can recommend to all of my clients who are coming from abroad. Yeah, tell me.
Could you explain what it is for
Yeah,
like people who don't know,
yeah,
like an idiot's explanation?
exactly. Of course, the Lex Beckham law, the official name is not Lex Beckham. It is just a common name or popular name because of the
Mhm.
soccer player David Beckham. Back at that time, on the year 2003, 2004, David Beckham was playing for Manchester United, and then Real Madrid wanted to get this player. So they arrived to an agreement where they said, okay, I'm going to establish a tax regime which is going to be just special for you, David Beckham. That's why it was then named in a common way David as Beckham Law. And this Lex Beckham Law has three advantages. Advantage number one, you just pay 24% on your taxes. Yeah, just 24%. Advantage number
Mhm.
two, you do not pay on the incomes that you receive from other countries. So the Spanish tax agency is not going to tax that. And advantage number three, you do not pay taxes on your wealth, on your world wealth tax. That's the key point. So these are the three advantages of the Beckham law. So, in order to apply the Beckham law, there are basically one or two requisites, which are basically you need to work as an employee in a company. All right, it could be in a Spanish company, or it could be also for a company abroad. Yeah, but you need to work for a company as an employee. Or there's a second way to also get access to the Lex Beckham, which is in the case if you create a Spanish company and this Spanish company has some kind of economical activity. Okay, so this would be like the two ways to get to Lex Beckham. There are other ways to have access to it, but they are too complicated. The two easy ways are these ways.
So when it comes to investing, so if I get onto this Beckham law and I'm investing from a Spanish brokerage account, I'll need to pay 24% on the capital gains from my Spanish brokerage account. But from abroad, from like a US or UK or EU country like Germany, I don't need to pay any taxes on this with Beckham law.
That's it. That's it. As you said, that's the story. If the money is coming from abroad, you do not pay any taxes on the Beckham law. So, from a tax point of view, one of the best strategies to do could be, for example, creating a company in a country where the corporate tax is very low. Let's say, for example, Andorra, Malta, Cyprus, Dubai, well, the United Arab Emirates. Yeah. So in this country, the companies are maybe taxed with 10% corporate tax, maybe 5% corporate tax, even 0% corporate tax. So you just get the money through dividends, and under the Lex Beckham regime, these dividends are not going to be taxed because the money is coming from abroad. And this company in Dubai, Andorra, Malta, or whatever, it is going to pay maybe 5% on corporate tax. So the whole taxation would just be this 5% corporate tax that this company has to pay in that country where it's located, but there's nothing else to be taxed. So that's maybe an optimized strategy for people who want to invest and want to apply the Lex Beckham law in order to optimize their tax situation.
So if I'm a big investor in the public markets and I come to Spain, and if I don't get employed by a local company, do I have to create my own company in Spain in order to get access to the Beckham law, and then I create another company in Andorra to funnel investments to and get the
Exactly.
income from there?
Exactly. Creating the Spanish company and giving a little bit of activity is just like an excuse or just like a storytelling in front of the Spanish tax agency, where the official story is that you came to Spain in order to create a company and to have some kind of activity. It can be any activity almost. So you could just open a store and sell clothes, for example, whatever you want to, just that it has a real activity. You can be the owner by 100% of the company, no problem. You just come here and then you do all your businesses outside of Spain. Of course, the Lex Beckham regime, you can apply it during 6 years. So the year where you come to Spain and you become a tax resident, plus the 5 next years. After the sixth year, then you would become just a regular tax resident, and then you just would need to make a decision if you would like to stay in Spain or if you would like to go back to your country.
Okay, got it. Wait, is this really the case? Because we have like a lot of clients that come in and they're trying to figure out how to get into the Beckham law, and they realize they can't do it as an autonomous. So for them, do they have to create an SL then, or?
Yeah, that's the idea. That's what I have done. I have it done with many clients this last year, 2023, for example, and I always got the approval from the Spanish tax agency. So that's absolutely no problem. It's pretty easy to get it. The key point, per my experience, that's super important, is that the client is really engaged with that project. All right, because of course the Spanish tax agency can prove this situation at any time. So if the Spanish tax agency comes in 2 years or in 3 years and asks you, "Hey guy, what have you done here? Have you really developed an economical activity, or is there nothing here?" So there are some clients that they tell you at the beginning, "Yeah, yeah, Julian, I'm going to do here lots of things and whatever." Then we create the Spanish company, a limited company, just regular one, and then after 2 years they haven't done anything. So in these cases, the application of the Lex Beckham law would be maybe jeopardized if you haven't done anything.
Okay, so to be clear, if I were to get onto the Beckham Law by creating a company,
Mhm.
I need to make sure that that company or business actually does something useful.
Exactly. And that this company does something. And as I said, it could be almost everything. Yeah. Something that really
Okay.
gives the impression that is an economical activity. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you earn 1 million euros or if you just earn €1. So the only thing that really counts is that it really looks like an economical activity.
Okay, got it. Other than the Beckham Law, are there any other special regimes or ways to get reduced taxation in Spain from investing?
Actually, this would be like almost the only one, especially for people coming from abroad. Here in Spain, the bad thing is that there are actually not so many possibilities. There are, for example, if you create a new company and you do not apply the Lex Beckham, if you're just a regular resident and you create a new company, then you have the right to deduct an amount of the money that you have invested in this new company. But besides of that, actually also related to stocks market or something like that, there's actually not really a tax exemption that people can get a huge profit of it.
Okay, got it. Separately, if I spend less than 183 days in Spain and I am thus a non resident, what tax situation does that mean for me for my taxes if my Spanish brokerage account or my foreign brokerage account? So, what does this mean for me? What taxes do I have to pay?
Exactly. If you are a non-resident here in Spain, then you will only be obliged to pay taxes on the incomes and wealth that you have in Spain, in the Spanish territory. All right. Regarding the tax residents, here's something that is a little bit tricky, but and not so many people know about it, and is about this 183 days. If you are, let's say that you spend, for example, 170 days or 160 days, you could just say, "Hey, I'm safe because I'm under this 183-day rule, so I don't need to take care about nothing," right? But if the tax inspector is a little bit smart, which they are, of course, and what they are going to say is that if there's not another country where you spend more time than in Spain, then they are going to consider Spain as your mainland. Let me give you an example to get it clear. For example, Rafael Nadal, tennis player, everybody knows this guy, right? This guy does not spend in Spain more than 183 days. Because this guy is always traveling. He is two weeks in Brazil, 3 weeks in the US, 2 weeks in Canada, 3 weeks in Australia, and maybe this guy spends only 100 days in Spain or 90 days in Spain. So Rafael Nadal could say, "Hey, I am not a Spanish tax resident, so I'm not going to pay taxes here in Spain." But of course, he wouldn't neither be tax resident in all of the countries that he is visiting for the tennis tournaments. So in the Spanish tax legislation, there's a special rule where it says that all the sporadic trips that you are doing to other countries, all these days that you spend abroad, they count to the mainland, especially to Spain, if Spain is going to be considered the mainland. So if you spend in Spain, for example, 160 days, but in all the other countries, you're just spending like 50 days, 70 days, maybe 110 days. So always below the amount of days that you have spent in Spain, the tax inspector is going to tell you that the main country where you are living is Spain and that all the other days are just related to sporadic trips. All right. And then he will bring your tax residency to Spain because he will say that if we compare Spain to any other single country, Spain is the one who wins. So this is something to always take into consideration, because it is not only the famous 183 rule, but if you really want to be safe, you really need to spend for that year more time in any other country.
So if I were to spend 160 days in Spain and I spend maybe 100 days in Andorra and then a few sporadic trips elsewhere, it's not enough to protect me from Spanish taxation. I need to be more than Spain.
Exactly. That's actually the idea. That's actually the idea behind this. The Spanish tax inspector would say, "Hey, Spain is your main country, so
Okay.
we will consider this time that you have spent abroad as just a sporadic trip, the same as if you would be a tennis player, and we will count these
Yeah.
days for Spain." Of course, if you get a tax certificate from another country, then this has a huge value. Yeah, this is a huge
Okay.
value in order to defend you in front of the Spanish tax authority. But anyway, you are going to have a lot of trouble if you are in a tax inspection and the tax inspector knows or figures out that Spain is the country where you are really spending more days, even though you do not reach the 183-day rule.
Okay, so even if I don't reach 183 days to be safe, if I spend a lot of time in another country, let's say I have my family mainly based in the UK, it's important for me to get a tax certificate from the UK to use as a first line of defense if the Spanish tax authorities come knocking.
Exactly. The first line of defense is the tax certificate, because the Spanish tax authority needs to recognize this certificate issued by any other country. But of course, this is just a first barrier. If you really want to be 100% safe, you really need to spend more time in any other country than in Spain. And especially if your expectations are to obtain a huge profit in 1 year, where you say, okay, next year 2025 I am really going to earn a lot of money, then for that year 2025 you really need to go abroad to somewhere to spend more time
Mm.
there than in Spain, and then you can come back in the year 2026, for example. And the good thing is that
Okay.
you really need to spend more time abroad than in Spain. So you could spend, for example, in Spain 5.5 months, for example, and you could spend then abroad 6.5 months. So you could still
Yeah.
live in Spain, let's say 4 or 5 months in a year.
Okay, got it. Now, next topic. Do taxes for public market investing differ at all depending on the asset class I invest in? So, for example, stocks, bonds, ETFs, so exchange traded funds, REITs, so real estate investment trusts, commodities like gold, silver, corn, or CFDs, contract for difference trading, crypto. Does it make a difference what I invest in?
Actually, there's no difference. According to the Spanish income tax law, they are always considering the sales that you do. And everything that you sell is going to be taxed in the capital gain tax, which goes from 19 to 28%. It doesn't matter if you're selling cryptocurrencies, if you're selling gold, or if you are selling shares in the stock market. Everything, or if you're selling a property, for example, everything is going to be taxed the same way. They just take the acquisition value, they compare the acquisition value with the transmission value, and the difference is going to be taxed as earnings, yeah, with these tax rates. Only
The transmission value is the sale value, right?
exactly the sale value,
Okay,
exactly.
right.
Exactly. So the only exemption would be when selling a property. If this property was your main house, then it is going to be tax exempt. Yeah, that's the only issue. But everything related to investments, so general investments, everything needs to be taxed here in Spain.
Okay, got it. All right. Now, do taxes for investing differ if I engage in it actively in the form of short term trading or day trading instead of a typical passive long term buy and hold investing? Does active trading count as personal income tax or does it stay taxed as capital gains? Does it make a difference how I trade?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. I have analyzed many Supreme Court rulings, yeah, about these issues, and they say that if it's your own money, the key is if it's your own money. Yeah, if it's your own money, it doesn't matter if you buy and sell once a week, once a year, or every day. Yeah, if it's your own money, it is going always to be taxed in the capital gain tax. Something different is if you are acting with money from other people, yeah, and you receive for that maybe a commission, then in this case you would be acting as a broker, and everything that you get from that, it would be going to be taxed as an economical activity. Yeah, so that's the difference if you are acting with your own money or if you are acting with money from other people.
So if I act with money from other people, let's say I borrow money from my brother or a family member or a friend, this would count as personal income tax, not capital gains tax.
Exactly. You act with the money of your brother, you invest for him, for example, whatever, and then your brother pays you like a commission. He says, "Hey, Sean, you have obtained, I don't know, 10% of benefit, of profit, you keep 2% of that." Yeah. And
Okay.
so these commissions that you would earn, it would count as an economical activity. You would act like a broker company in this case.
Okay, so the share of those profits, if I like get a certain share of that, I have to pay personal income tax.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. If you are doing it for other people, you will need to pay the income tax. If you're going to act with your own money, as I said, it doesn't matter if you buy every day or once a week or once a year.
Okay, got it. All right, now what are the common mistakes you see people make with public market investing and taxes in Spain?
There's a special rule that says that if you sell a share from a company, let's say Apple, for example, if you buy this share in the next 2 months after having sold these shares, you cannot deduce the loss that you may have obtained. Let's suppose that you are coming at the end of the year, it is November, for example, or December, and you see your balances and you say, okay, I have here a loss. I really want to compensate this loss with an earning from another stock that I have sold, for example. That's a typical situation. And you just sell the stock in Amazon the 25th of December or the 30th of December, just before year ends. And then you buy it again 1 week later, the 5th of January, for example. Yeah, that's something that many people do. So this loss from this sale, the 25th of December or the 30th of December, will not be deducible until you sell the stock again. Yeah, so that's something to be taken into consideration because it is seen as a speculative move, and the Spanish tax agency wants to avoid all this kind of speculative moves. So actually, if you want to make this loss count, you would need to wait 2 months until you buy exactly the same stock again.
Yeah. This strategy of selling to take advantage of a loss to offset capital gains, this is called tax loss harvesting, right?
I would say so. I'm not pretty sure about the technical name. Yeah, but I
Okay.
would say at least it sounds like it could be this one.
Okay. So I can't really use tax loss harvesting if I buy the same share again later. Does it can I use the money to buy a different share if it's
Yeah,
is it fine then or
exactly,
like
exactly.
okay. So
In the Spanish tax legislation. It is said that only if you buy the exact same type of share or investment product.
okay, got it. All right. Now, what happens if I want to move to Spain from the US or UK, either to retire or to just live my best life in Spain, and want to extract or use a big chunk of money from my big US investment portfolio to Spain to either just live from it or maybe buy a house here to live or rent out? What do I do in this scenario in order to not face a big tax bill from bringing my money to Spain?
So, for people who have huge wealth, we always recommend to use the Lex Beckham because with Lex Beckham, you are sure that for the next 6 years you will be covered. Yeah, you can have 100 million euros in the US and you don't need to worry about that, about the wealth tax. Yeah, so you can have a lot of money, you can live here in Spain, you just buy a property in Malaga, Valencia, Barcelona, wherever. Yeah, you are very safe. And with Lex Beckham, you can just stay 6 years and you don't pay taxes here in Spain for the money that you receive from the US, and you neither pay the wealth tax. After these 6 years, for example, let's suppose that we are now in the seventh year and you really want to keep staying in Spain, for example, then in this case, it would be very interesting to structure your wealth. What's the problem about investments? That investments is money invested in the stock market, in investment funds, or whatever. It cannot be tax exempt from the wealth tax. That's actually the main problem with this type of goods. If it's about a company, for example, if you have a company that produces whatever, and the company is 20 million euros worth, then you can just let these shares that you own in this company tax exempt from the wealth tax, for example. But if we are talking about just normal investments in the stock market or investment funds or public debt or whatever, that's a weak point in terms of from a wealth tax perspective. So first thing that I would always recommend, especially for people who have a huge wealth, is to apply Lex Beckham, which is pretty easy. You just need to have a very small business here in Spain to make it look like it is a real business. Yeah, that's it. And then you can live at least the next 6 years without needing to think about this tax issue. You just can live here in Spain without any problems. And then if it comes to the seventh year, we will see. Yeah, then we will see what we can do.
Okay, so the biggest problem for me without the Beckham Law, if I come from abroad and I have a lot of wealth abroad, is the wealth tax.
Yeah,
How much is the wealth tax?
the wealth tax here in Spain, it depends on the region you are staying. For example, in Barcelona, you have a tax exemption for the wealth tax of just 500,000 euros. Everything that exceeds 500,000 euros needs to be taxed in the wealth tax. If you go to any other regions, it may vary. But in any case, in all of the regions of Spain, if you have more than 3 million euros in your wealth tax worldwide, then you need to pay the wealth tax. If you are just a little bit over this 3 million euros threshold, you really do not need to carry much about this issue. Let's suppose you have 3.5 million euros and you live in Madrid, for example. In Madrid, there's an exemption of 3 million euros. You would just need to pay the 500,000 euros, and you may pay, for example, 1,000 euros, 2,000 euros, maybe 3,000 euros a year, which is not so much money, especially for people who have 3.5 million euros in wealth. But if we are talking about people who have 10 million, 20 million, 30 million euros in wealth, then it becomes a huge tax burden. We are talking about if you have, for example, 15 million euros in wealth, then you would be obliged to pay like 150,000 euros a year for the wealth tax a year, which is completely crazy.
Yeah.
So we are talking about if we are talking about huge wealth people, then we are talking about a lot of money for the wealth tax.
Okay, got it. All right. Now, just to recap, if I were to not declare, my wealth with respect to the wealth tax, and let's say 2, 3 years go by, and I didn't file any forms, and I'm above, let's say the 500K level for my wealth tax, what's sort of the repercussions? What's the bad case?
Exactly. So basically, the people have two options. People can say, "Okay, I'm not going to declare anything." What is the worst case scenario that may happen? So the worst case scenario is that you get busted by the Spanish tax agency. In this case, you would need to pay whatever you would have to pay back at that time, plus a general sanction of 50%, 50% of the amount that you did not pay. Let's suppose that the wealth tax, in your case, you have a lot of wealth and you have to pay 80,000 euros. So, in case you get caught, you get busted, you would need to pay this 80,000 euros plus 50% as a sanction of that, which would mean plus 40,000 euros as a sanction. This is like the general sanction here in Spain. Exactly. It could
Yeah.
be a little bit more or a little bit less, but if you reach an agreement with the Spanish tax agency, the general sanction is 50%. Exactly.
50%.
If
And the best way to sort of protect against this is the Beckham Law by far, you say?
by far is the Beckham Law, especially because Spain is interested in getting rich people to come to Spain. Actually, the Lex Beckham Law is meant for rich people. I mean, if you are a person who earns,
Yeah.
let's say, 30,000 euros a year or 40,000 euros a year, it doesn't matter to apply the Lex Beckham Law because what you pay for the Lex Beckham Law, the 24% on average, is more or less the same as if what you would pay if you would be under the regular regime. And if you do not have a huge wealth abroad or you don't have huge incomes coming from abroad, it wouldn't make any difference. So the Lex Beckham Law is made for rich people, basically.
So, what define what's like the minimum threshold for rich? Like, what income do I have to make, or how big do my investments have to be to make it more worth going the Beckham Law? When does it make sense?
It makes sense if we are talking about 50,000 euros or 50,000 euros and above. For less than 50,000 euros, unless you would have a huge wealth abroad, there are some people who have like a huge wealth, but their incomes are very low. Sometimes it happens, these kind of situations. In this case, if you are not earning 50,000 euros or more, I wouldn't recommend you to apply the Lex Beckham law because it doesn't make any difference.
Okay, so once I hit 50,000 euros, I should really go for the Beckham Law.
Exactly.
Got it.
Or if
Uh,
you have a huge wealth abroad.
okay, got it. Just for our viewers, there's often like a very famous 6 month deadline when it comes to the Beckham Law, and a lot of people miss Beckham Law. Is there any way to sort of skirt the 6 month requirement? I've sometimes seen cases of people being able to apply through their spouses if their spouse had the Beckham Law arrangement. What are ways to get around the 6 month deadline?
Exactly. So since last year, since the 1st of January 2023, the spouse has also the right to apply the Lex Beckham. So in cases where maybe one of the two people have missed this chance, maybe you could try with the other person. Yeah. So the 6 months getting into account once the person who wants to apply for it is registered in the social security system. This is the day
Yeah.
when it counts. Yeah, that day where you are registered in the social security system here in Spain, then the 6 months are going to be counted. After the 6 months have passed away, then you don't have any chance. So in this case, maybe you could try then, you would have a second chance through your wife or through your husband to get the application through them. And then to apply also you for that, but not as a main character of the story, but as the wife or as the husband of the other person.
Do I have to be married, or does pareja de hecho work for Beckham Law?
That's a good question. I would need to check that. I would need to check that if
Okay.
pareja de hecho has also the same rights as the spouse.
Okay, got it. All right, and just to be clear here, like, what do I need to do to get into the social security system? So, is that the moment I arrive in Spain, the moment I get a job in Spain? If I arrive in Spain and for the first 3 months I'm just sort of chilling out, is it the moment I get my NIA? When does the start date for Beckham Law?
Exactly. For in order to be registered in the social security system here in Spain, you need definitely a NIE. So the NIE is the first step. Without the NIE, you can almost do nothing here in Spain. The NIE counts as well as the identification number, as the ID, as well as the tax number. It is both in one single
Mhm.
number. In other countries, they separate. The people have a tax number and people have an ID number. But here in Spain, it is everything in one single number. So the first step is to get the NIE number. This is the very first step. Then you can chill a little bit. It doesn't matter. Yeah, you can be here like 2, 3, 4, 5 months here without doing anything. But the main issue or the main aspect that needs to be always taken into consideration is that there's a clear relationship between moving from abroad to Spain and the job that you got. This is the main issue. Yeah, that there's a clear relationship. Of course, if you came here to Spain and you spent like 1.5 years without doing nothing, and then you say, hey, I'm going to register now in the social security system here in Spain, and I'm going to tell the story that I came to Spain to work for this company, the whole storytelling won't make sense because the authorities will take a look at the situation and they're going to tell you that there was no relationship between the moving to Spain and getting the job.
Okay, so if I arrive to Spain and I first come to Spain just to check it out for a month, then I start looking for work, and then maybe after 3, 4 months I finally find a job, then it's okay, and that's where the date starts. So theoretically, I could be in Spain for up to let's say 8, 9 months, and still have time for the Beckham Law as long as it starts from whenever I get my first job.
Exactly. So actually, the most important thing is the storytelling. It is all about the
Yeah.
storytelling, that everything makes sense. What the tax authority always take a look at it is that there's a connection between you moving to Spain and you getting this job. Yeah, that's the only thing that really counts. This connection, yeah, that is a cause and effect. Yeah, that you moved to Spain because of that job or because of the creation of a company, for example, of a Spanish company.
Okay, got it, got it. All right. Well, moving on to some of our last questions. What are the best setups you've seen for public market investing of someone living in Spain?
Yeah, actually, it is a little bit difficult to say which are the best setups. Maybe I would recommend to have a company abroad in a country where you do not pay much taxes, as we commented, for example, Andorra, and then try to invest all the money through this company, through this Andorran company, for example, or a company in Malta, for example, something like that. And then this company would pay taxes on 10%, for example, in Andorra, just fixed. I'm always saying Andorra because Andorra is just next to Spain. It is very close to Barcelona.
Yeah.
You just drive 2 hours with the car, so it's pretty easy. So you have a company there, and you try to invest everything through this company, and all the profits that you obtain are going to be taxed with 10%. Of course, the bad thing comes at that point when you want to take the money out of the company, because there you would have to pay for the dividends. But if your plan is just to keep to get as much money as possible, and you do not really need this money, then you can just try to play with that. Or you could also get a loan from your company. That could be another option. Your company makes a huge profit, and your company gives you a loan for I don't know 100,000 euros, but then you need to pay back the loan. That's the issue. So of course you can just establish a long period of time, let's say 20 years or 30 years, but you really need to be paying back every month, I don't know, 500 euros or whatever, so that nobody can say that that was a donation from your company to you, or that this was like a dividend, so that it's just a very clear loan.
If the company is sort of like also the main source of my income, let's say I make my income from trading, or the majority of my income is living off my investments, how do I make it so that the Spanish tax authorities don't lay claim to my Andorran income? How do I protect myself? How do I make sure that it stays at 10% and I don't pay 30% extra in Spain?
Exactly. The Andorran company would be the one who would manage all the investments, would be the one who would invest in all kind of investment funds, and would be the one
Mm-hmm.
who would obtain the benefits. As long as the money does not go out from this Andorran company, there wouldn't be any issue. Of course, the problem when you create a company abroad is that in most of the cases you need to have a little bit of substance in this company, yeah, so that it remains under the Andorran tax legislation. What happens, for example, according to the double tax agreements, what's the residence of a company? Yeah, it's pretty easy to establish the residence of a natural person like you or me. But what about companies? Companies, the same as people, they also have a tax residence. Yeah, usually the tax residence is at that place where the company is created. But for tax purposes, the tax residency of a company will be that place where the decisions are going to be made. Yeah. So that's why you can have an Andorran company, and the Andorran company would just pay 10%, but then you really need to make sure that the decisions of the company, the management decisions, are being made in the Andorran territory. So that's why in some cases you need a little bit of substance, or someone who is also administrator of the company that lives in Andorra, or that lives in Dubai or in another country. Yeah, of course, if we are talking about a lot of money, it would make sense. Yeah, if we are talking about saving, let's say 10%, 15%, something like that on 10 million euros, then we would be talking about a tax saving of 1.5 million euros, which is a lot of money. If we are just talking about incomes of 40,000 euros, then it doesn't make sense, because the costs of creating a company there and having the needed substance would be higher than the taxes that you could save. So this is the structure that I could recommend for people who are very wealthy and that expect to earn a lot of money. If you're just a regular person that can get maybe 30,000 euros or 40,000 euros with trading,
Mhm.
there's actually not really a big thing that you can just create. You will just pay between 19 and 28%, which is the capital gain tax. You will land
Mhm.
more or less on 22% on average, and that's it. That's everything that you can actually do.
What about people that are earning maybe between the range of 100,000 to 300,000? So, we have a lot of people in our community that are sort of in this high earning professional range, but they're not like insanely off the top wealthy. So, this range of 100K to 300K, what does it make sense for them to create these companies abroad?
Mhm. Here in Spain, if I have it listed here. For example, if you earn 200,000 euros as a Spanish tax resident, you would pay 44,000 euros in taxes, which means around 22%. All right, 22% in taxes. So if you create a company abroad that manages all the investments instead of you as a private person, then you need to analyze how much money is this company going to pay for tax
Wait,
issues. Yeah,
sorry, just to clarify, this 200,000, this is an investment income, right? This is not personal income.
this is personal income for a person like you or me who invests in investment funds or in
Okay, okay,
stock
invest.
markets
Okay,
and obtains earnings of 200,000 euros a
okay,
year. Yeah, two hundred
okay. So
thousand euros, 44,000 euros. It's the tax burden. So
okay,
there you need to see if it makes sense or not, because of course if you create a company abroad and the company is going to pay 10% corporate tax, yeah, this would mean 10% on 200,000 euros, which would mean 20,000 euros would be the tax burden. So instead of paying 44,000 euros, you would pay 20,000 euros. So you would have a tax saving of 24,000 euros. But of course, you need to create the company in Andorra. You need to pay someone in Andorra who takes care about this, who takes care about this company, who does the bookkeeping, who makes the company also compliant with the Andorran legislation. So there are some management fees that you are going to need to pay that are maybe, I don't know, let's say 5 or 10,000 euros a year. So you would be
yeah,
in Andorra paying 20,000 euros plus, let's say, 10,000 euros management fees. It's 30,000 euros. And here in Spain, you would pay 44,000 euros. So it's only 14,000 euros of tax savings. So in this sense, I don't see that it would make a real difference. Yeah, I would recommend this type of structures for people who really earn, let's say, 1 million euros a year or above. Or if you can find a country where the company would pay 0% taxes, then it could make sense. For example, in Dubai, for example, up to a certain amount, you don't pay taxes, just 0%. So maybe in this case, it would make sense because then the difference would be between 22% in Spain for capital gain tax and 0% in Dubai, for example. So there would be a difference, a higher difference. But it's always a matter of comparing how much taxes you save and then making a decision that makes sense.
okay, got it. So, in conclusion, if I'm super rich, go for Andorra, but elsewise, if I'm in the 100 to 300K range, looking at other countries like Dubai, which is a popular option, would be a great way to check out and sort of reduce my capital gains
Exactly.
taxation.
That's what I could recommend. I mean, if you are like around 50,000 euros, I would tell you, hey, don't do anything because the management fees and everything are going to cost more than what you need to pay.
Yeah,
If you are in this section between 100 and 300,000 euros, then it would make sense, but maybe in Dubai, where you would
yeah.
just pay 0% taxes. And if you are super rich, then it makes sense to make it anywhere because just saving, let's say, 10% on a super high amount, it brings you a super high tax savings. So that would be more or less my recommendations.
And the key thing is just to prove that there's substance in the company, there's someone taking care of it in that local country abroad, and I guess providing maybe accounting reports if the tax authorities ever asked.
Exactly. That's the thing. And that you say, okay, I'm going once every 3 months to Dubai, and I have there the general meeting where I decide together with this person who's taking care of the bookkeeping and tax issues in Dubai, and we make there the decisions of the company. So that's the way how it should be done in order to make sure that the tax residency of the company remains in Dubai and is not in Spain.
Okay, got it. All right, now moving on to our last question. This is similar to the tax loss harvesting that we talked about before, but imagine I'm just a regular Joe. I'm earning maybe 80K in my day job, and I have losses from investing in a year. So I had a portfolio of maybe also 80K euros, and it went down this year. I had a bit of a bad year. Can I use my losses to offset my income tax from my job or income from my business? Can I do this kind of tax loss harvesting?
As a general rule, everything that you earn is divided in two big groups in the personal income tax. So, one big group would be dividends, interest, and capital gains. Yeah, these three together. And they are going to be taxed under the capital gain tax rate, which goes between 19 and 28. Then there's another group of type of incomes, which is the salaries that you earn, economical activity that you may have as an entrepreneur, for example, or as a self-employed, and the incomes coming from the rental of properties. So these three
Yeah.
together, they are taxed under the general tax rates, which goes from 19 to more or less 45, 48% on the top. Yeah. So the profit and losses from one group can be compensated inside of that group. And the profit and losses from the other group can be compensated with the profit and losses from the other group. So this will always be two separated groups. All right. So, and also, if you are talking about compensations, there are also some kind of limitations inside of each of this group. Let's suppose, for example, that you have sold some shares from Amazon and you had a loss from 10,000 euros, for example. Yeah, everything went bad and you just sold them and you had a loss of 10,000 euros. Let's suppose that you have earned dividends, yeah, and you received for dividends also 10,000 euros. So you have dividends plus 10,000 euros and a loss of 10,000 euros from the sale of Amazon shares, for example. Yeah. Someone could think, okay, I'm going to compensate the 10,000 with the 10,000. Yeah. And in the end, I have
Hmm.
a result of zero. You cannot compensate everything. There's a limitation of 25%. So you can get the loss here, the 10,000 euros loss, you can compensate it up until 25% of the incomes that you obtain through dividends, for example. So it would be you could compensate up until 2,500 euros, which is 25% of the 10,000 euros of dividends that you have earned. The rest of it,
Yeah.
the 7,500 euros, you need to keep it and you can then compensate it during the next 4 years. Yeah. So even inside of
Okay.
these
Got it.
two groups, there are some kind of limitations inside of these two big groups.
Okay, so I can only offset 25% of my gains we're using
Exactly.
losses.
That's it. If you want to compensate capital losses with dividends, only 25%. But if you want to compensate capital gains with capital gains, then you can compensate everything. In this case, you can
Yep.
compensate everything. It is just if you want to compensate capital gains with dividends or capital gains with interest, for example.
Okay, got it. And but I can't use the capital gains losses against my job income or my business
No,
income. I
they
can't.
are, they
Those
are
two
two
things were separate.
separate groups. Exactly.
Okay, got it. All right, I think we've gone through all the questions. I don't know if Scott is still in the chat or if he's listening, but yeah, I think we've gone through everything. How are you, by the way, with the questions? Did it all feel fine for you?
No, actually, everything was good. I'm sorry that I couldn't give you like many tricks. I know you were expecting like some kind of tricks, optimization and that stuff. But here in Spain, it's really tough about all kind of capital gains and investments because the tax legislature, so the tax government does not consider that investments are something really necessary. Yeah, so they only give this
Yeah.
tax exemption, for example, by selling your own property, your main house, because they think that that's something that everybody needs to have the right to have an own house. So
Yeah.
that's why in this case you wouldn't pay taxes. But if you're talking just about buying and gambling or just buying and selling shares, investment funds, or whatever, there's actually no reason for giving a tax exemption according to the point of view of the
Hmm.
Spanish tax government.
Yeah. Except when it comes to like Beckham Law, that's mainly like some of the main ways, or setting up something abroad where you put it under a different tax legislation. No, I
Exactly.
mean that's also kind of what we were expecting, and I mean it's a question that comes up a lot from our audience, and we're just trying to educate them on what can you do and what can't you do in Spain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Lex Beckham is nowadays, since last year, the law was modified, and now all the digital nomads are accepted under the Lex Beckham regime, and also people who are creating their own company, even though they have 100% of the shares of their own company, they also have the right to apply Lex Beckham, which before they could only have until 25% of the shares, which made it a little bit more complicated. But right now, since last year, everybody who's coming here to Spain who has wealth or who has huge earnings or high earnings, we always recommend the application of the Lex Beckham regime. And actually, because it's pretty easy, yeah. So the Spanish tax authorities are pretty open to accept the application of the Lex Beckham regime. But of course, I always warn all my clients to really make it look like there's something going on, because at the beginning I tell my clients, hey, we received the confirmation. Right now you're under the Lex Beckham regime until the year 2029 or 2030. Congratulations. And then the client think, okay, everything is done. I can forget about this issue. And then there would be the risk that maybe in 2 or 3 years there's a tax inspection and they inspectionate you and they tell you, hey, you promised us that you would start a business and you would do whatever, and then in the end you haven't done anything. So please
Yeah.
give us all the money back as if you would have been a regular tax resident. Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes to digital nomads, that you said everyone as of last year who's a digital nomad can apply for Beckham Law. What is here the actual definition of digital nomad? Do you have to be employed by someone else and you're just sort of moving here to Spain to sort of live your best life, or can you be a freelancer digital nomad?
No, you need to be employed by someone else. You need to be employed by someone else. There's still the chance of being self employed in some cases. But the main issue is that your relations are with companies from abroad. That's the key issue. So that you are just here in Spain, but actually you do not do nothing here in Spain. You are just working for companies that are abroad. Yeah. And if you fulfill this issue or this requisite, then you have right to apply it. So there are a lot of digital nomads, people like you, for example, Sean, who just work with a computer and who can live wherever you want to. And the clients, they are all abroad. So in cases like this, you can just live in Spain and you can apply for the digital nomad visa in this case. So that's a pretty good option. Here, it is very important to make a slight difference, all right? Because there's the concept digital nomad visa and there's the Lex Beckham regime. It is very
Okay.
common that I see that people misunderstand these two concepts when actually they are two different concepts, yeah? Um, the digital nomad visa was thought for people who come from abroad of the European Union, people who just need to have the right to stay in Spain. For example, someone who's coming from America, yeah.
Yeah.
Here in Spain, you can just stay here. I think maximum 3 months, just as a normal tourist. But you cannot live
Hmm.
here in Spain just legally, let's say so. And you cannot work here in Spain for a Spanish company just without doing nothing. So you have, for example, the golden visa, where if you buy, for example, 500,000 euros in a Spanish property, you just get it, and with the golden visa, you can just be and stay here in Spain as much time as you want to. Or you can get, for example, the digital nomad visa, where you just demonstrate that you are working for people abroad, and then they give you this digital nomad visa, and then you can live here in Spain. That's one thing. So digital nomad visa is just to have the right to live in Spain. Of course, for people who come from Europe, they do not need the digital nomad visa, because inside of the European Union there's a free flow of people and capital. So it does.
So if I'm European, how can I get the digital nomad taxation?
No, here's the thing. The digital nomad visa is one thing, and the taxation is another thing. Yeah. So the
Okay.
digital nomad visa is only for people who come from abroad of the European Union. Only for these
Yeah.
people. Yeah. Where they say, "Hey, I'm a digital nomad. Can I please live in Spain with the sun and the nice
Yeah.
beaches and everything?" Yeah. And if you can demonstrate that you work for companies abroad, they give you the digital nomad visa. So that's fine. Perfect. Now you can stay in Spain. First step. Of course, for people that come from the European Union, they don't need a visa, because inside of the European Union, they can live in Spain anytime they want. Okay, so this is one issue, just to have the right to live in Spain and to stay here. The second issue is the taxation field. And now it comes to the Lex Beckham regime. Under the Lex Beckham regime, you really need to work for someone. Yeah, you cannot
Hmm.
be autonomous. You cannot be self-employed. If you are self-employed, you can only have the right to apply the Lex Beckham regime if you are in the field of investigation and development and whatever. So just in this specific field. So if you want to apply the Lex Beckham regime, you need to work for someone. And since last year, since January last year, a person can come here in Spain and does not need necessary to work for a Spanish company. He can work for a company abroad, just remote from home office, and he has the right to apply the Lex Beckham regime. Yeah. So one thing is digital nomad visa. This is interesting for people who comes from abroad, outside of the European Union,
Hmm.
just to stay in Spain. Okay, and once they have the digital nomad visa, we take a look at the Lex Beckham regime and say, okay, you will apply it, but only in this case if you work for a company. There, you really need to work for a company. Yeah.
But then, in short, as a freelancer, then I can't get onto it, even if my clients are from
As a
abroad.
freelancer, you cannot apply the Lex Beckham regime. You really need to work for someone. Only if you would be in the field of investigation, development, and then you need a report and
Okay.
whatever. So it's really complicated. Only if you are a doctor or someone really from that field.
If I used to be employed by someone in the UK and then I came to Spain as a freelancer because they can't directly employ me in Spain, because maybe they're too scared, they don't have a Spanish entity. If I still continue to only work for that person who used to be my employer, but now I'm self-employed, does it count, or do I need to be employed by them?
You need to be employed. You can be fired. For example, you could come to Spain, you stay with a company 5 months, then you get fired, and then you have a certain period of time to find another job. Yeah, but you need always to
Okay.
be employed unless you have your own company. Yeah, unless you are an entrepreneur who has his own company and who does an economical activity here in Spain. But if not, you always need to be employed somewhere.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. By the way, I know this has gone quite long, but I think you were great. Yeah. I mean, thanks for taking the time. Hope to maybe see you soon for a real estate session.
Exactly. Just let me know, and we stay in touch. All right.
Have a great evening, Julian. Ciao, ciao.
Have a great evening. Ciao. See you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I know this interview has been a long time coming, so next we'll try to have a session on real estate, or maybe do a shorter, quick Q&A session for the questions that you ask in the community. So feel free to let us know by commenting or posting in the community what you would like to see. And if you found this interview helpful, be sure to share this community with people who might be interested to learn. Bye now.